Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Lieutenant Stephen Rogers, and thank you for joining me this evening on Tonight in America. Well, we have a few things, very, very important things we're going to talk about tonight. I'm so thankful that we were able to get back in time for tonight's broadcast. We've been running about here in the state of New Jersey, and very soon we'll be going across the country trying to get conservative Republicans elected to office. But first, I want to extend my deepest condolences and sympathies to the people of Canada, to the victims who were brutally and viciously and terribly stabbed to death, and many wounded over this past weekend. These are tragedies that should not happen. We waited a couple of hours before we actually posted what we wanted to say. We were waiting for your prime minister to go on the air. I don't know if he did or not, but whatever the case is, the fact of the matter is that we in America certainly express to you our condolences. Now, folks, I've got to tell you, when that occurred, unfortunately here in America, we're kind of numb to what's going on with regard to violence against innocent people. I mean, the occurrence that happened, the criminal act that happened in Canada that resulted in the loss of life of individuals who went on a rampage, happens every weekend here. And I'm going to talk to you about that. Now, I share that with you to be absolutely sure that you understand that you start pointing your government in the right direction with regard to how to prevent these crimes, or at least minimize them. And I'll be sharing that with you as we go and give you a terrible body count this past weekend in the United States. Now, look, it's Labor Day. There's a lot to celebrate. Believe me, there's a lot to pay tribute to with regard to the workers of Canada, America, and of the free world around the world who have built their countries, the people who built our infrastructures, our military, and on and on and on. I mean, everyone has a part in building their countries. And we need to focus on that. And we need to understand that part of building a nation is not only with the physical instruments that the good Lord has given us, the steel, the metal, the aluminum, the concrete, the things we do when we build roads and make clothes, etc. But to make sure that we understand that God's given us other gifts, the gifts of freedom and liberty. And when we pray, when we stay close to God, when we begin to realize that we can never, ever do this alone, and that life is so precious, we need to fight for freedom and liberty that much more aggressively and vigorously. Because a lot of things that are happening today are not the result, believe me, are not the result of the hardworking people in our cities and in our towns and in our states and provinces across our lands, but it's the result of politicians, folks. I've said this all along. I put the blame of a lot of what's going on in our countries around the world at the feet of politicians. Here in America, they have promised so much and delivered so little that we now have a situation where people are beginning to try to protect themselves by trying to enforce the laws themselves, because there are no police left. There's no laws left. The lawlessness is crazy here. But I thank God that we do have a movement in this country that is very peaceful, that is very lawful, and that we're going to begin to make very, very big changes coming in November. Now, before I go on and before I forget, folks, I ran that commercial regarding detours for a reason. Over the past 48 to 72 hours, and interesting enough, a spike after the incident that happened in Canada. We did hear from a lot of Canadian people. Again, the letters and the emails about being distressed and very, very depressed at times with regard to what's going on around you and what's going on around us here in America. So I ran that commercial because detours, as you notice in that commercial, there's a young lady who looks very depressed. Well, detours deals with this very significant fact that a lot of people either don't want to accept or understand that it's there, but just don't get it. You're not alone, folks. We are not alone. You are not alone. There's light at the end of the tunnel of all the problems that we're facing. Now, there's a story in Detours that impacted quite a few people. And when you write these books, you don't realize what you say or write is going to have profound impact on a lot of people. And frankly, I thought there were some other chapters I wrote that were the chapters that would impact people. But no, it was a story about a young man who was on the edge, folks. And when I say on the edge, I mean on the edge. A story about a young man and his mother, and a relationship that he thought he did not have with God, that he thought that God abandoned him, that he thought that God was not listening to him. Well, he was on the edge, folks. And thank God Almighty that somewhere along the line, his life was detoured where he was pulled off the edge. Now, some of you tonight might feel that you're on the edge, and I'm not saying you're going to jump off a cliff, but on the edge of wondering, boy, where do I go? What do I do? How do I get there? How do I help? The letters, the calls I get all the time from people so distressed that they want to do more. They want to hug kids after they hear about a shooting of children in this country. They want to go out and hug people and kiss people and let them know that they're there for them, and they're just so frustrated. Well, you're looking at the number one guy, folks, when it comes to frustration and dealing very, very difficultly with a lot of these problems that we're facing. My point is, we're all in the same boat. We're all in. None of us are supermen or superwomen or superheroes. We're all in the same boat. But what we need to do is focus on what we can do, and then understand that God Almighty has given us all kinds of gifts in order to bring comfort to those who need comfort, in order to protect those who need protection. And that comes through the power of prayer. So that's what Detours is all about. And I hope you have a chance to pick it up tonight. If you order them tonight at rogersamerica.com, you're going to receive that book tonight. All right, folks. So let's get to some issues that have occurred here in the United States. And it's, I tell you, it is distressing. Every week it just continues to go on and on and on. And every week we're going to bring it to the American people. Now, 8 people have been killed and dozens of others have been wounded by gunfire in Chicago over this past weekend. 8 people. That's 8 people added to the 797 homicides that occurred last year. 797 homicides last year in one city. People are being shot, they're being stabbed, they're being mugged, they're being beaten, they're being raped, but these are homicides in one city, Chicago. Now, what has happened as of recent, and I've said this all along, when those homicide figures or those assault figures and those crime figures move from the inner city and into the suburbs and into the upper class neighborhoods where the rich and the mighty and those who create the laws that are hurting us, when those criminal elements get into the neighborhoods, things change. Now, small businesses and corporations actually have had their CEOs and others meet with the mayor of Chicago, and I'll talk to you a little bit about New York later, with the mayor and with her staff, and they said enough's enough, they're pulling out of the city. Now, violent crime in the city of Chicago has increased 35% compared to last year. 35%. That's pretty close to 50%, isn't it? We're talking about not shoplifting. We're not talking about petty theft. We're talking about muggings. We're talking about shootings. We're talking about employers of these big companies walking down the street, trying to take a train, getting shot and killed randomly, beaten on the streets in broad daylight. Well, enough is enough. Why wasn't enough before it happened to those high and mighty, very rich, very wealthy people who don't have to put up with this day in and day out? Why wasn't it enough then? Well, you see, they're smart. I have a lot of wealthy friends, folks. I've met millionaires. I got friends who are millionaires. I think one guy's a billionaire. I mean, they're very good people, nice people. But I've shared with them, man, you guys got to get involved. You got to get engaged. You got to help protect the people who you are selling your products to, who you are marketing your products to. And the only way that these politicians are going to listen, at least up until the time we could throw them the heck out of office, is if you go after one color. That's right. No, not that black man or white man, but go after one color, and that's green. Many of them could care less about reading about, hearing about, and knowing about the color red being shed on the streets of these cities, because it isn't their blood. It isn't their children's blood. It isn't their wife's blood, their husband's blood. It isn't their blood. The flow of blood is from the hardworking middle class and poor people of every country on this earth. While those who are creating laws that they say are to protect us are actually killing us. That's why we, the people, need to get engaged. I'm going to tell you, folks, we outnumber them. We outnumber them by the millions. And they do fear us. They are scared to death of us. Because at one point in time, we didn't have the internet. We didn't have all of the platforms that we have now. We didn't have people all over the country doing what I do and what you do. Now we have that. And they're scared to death of it. And so what we need to do is put a little bit more fear into their bodies. Gary Rabine. You know who Gary Rabine is, folks? He's the founder of the Rabine Group and owner of 13 businesses in the city of Chicago. And he says that the surging crime rate, he said this to the people in the city, the leaders of Chicago, some time ago, at least this was reported by the media, that one of the driving factors of his decision to pull out his road paving company and his crews out of the city was the crime surge. He's leaving. So are many others. He said that his crews were repeatedly robbed, sometimes in broad daylight, and even after adding security to the jobs, the security people had problems. I've heard from some company people where they have hired security to protect the people. Now they got to hire security to protect the security guards. Well, people say, well, why don't the cops do anything? There are none left. These Democrats here in this country, the United States of America, now, of course, they're denying it because in an election, they've pushed to defund the police. They've demoralized the police. They've destroyed the police. They've deteriorated the power of the police. And now, what is happening, by doing what they've done, they've emboldened the power of criminals. They've allowed criminals to go crazy in this country. And I'm going to name some of them tonight. I'm going to name the criminals that these liberal judges and others have let go. To do what? Maybe to commit more crimes. What do you think of that? Now, thousands and thousands of jobs each year are going to be leaving the city of Chicago. And I got to tell you, folks, the business leaders of that city and other cities have said that more of them are getting robbed. They're just getting robbed day in and day out. Their equipment is being stolen. And I got to tell you, folks, it's going to continue on and on and on until there are some changes in government. Now, a word to the Canadians. And I refrained from saying anything about this before tonight because I wanted things to settle down. I don't want to be accused of politicizing anything. I do the same thing with the Americans people. I say, look, we're not going to go on the air and talk about gun control after an incident because the Democrats are going to do that. Let's pay respects to the people who have lost their lives and their relatives, and then let's, in a very methodical, articulate, and intelligent manner, address this issue. And so here's what I'm sharing with the Canadian people tonight, because we've gone through this, we've been through this before, we're going to go through this again, and hopefully come November, the tide will turn. If and when your government begins to talk about controlling crime by banning things, like in this country, ban the gun and we're going to control crime, or by creating legislation that's going to hinder your ability to protect yourself, remember this. They did this in America. They passed the most strictest gun laws in the city of Chicago that has the highest homicide rates now in the country. They passed the strictest gun laws in Washington, D.C. that is now seeing a dramatic surge in homicides as a result of guns. Think about this. As a result of guns, according to who? According to them. I'm getting to a point. And in the city of New York, the same thing. Strict gun control laws, strict gun control measures, and the homicide rate at the end of a gun barrel increases. What does that tell you, folks? Well, the story that the Democrats in this country tell us, and maybe the story the Canadian people are going to get, is, well, we got to really get the guns off the streets, or we got to make sure that the law-abiding citizen doesn't have a gun available in order to kill someone else, even though that person or that someone else is trying to kill you. My point is, folks, it isn't guns. It never was guns, and it'll never be guns. The problem in the United States of America is lawlessness. It's criminals. It's criminals, folks. And I dare to say this, and now I'm going to get people upset. Too bad. I dare to say this. The crime rate in the United States of America is dramatically increasing as a result of criminals. Not only the ones on the streets, but the ones sitting behind desks, the ones sitting behind desk in a courtroom, the ones sitting behind desk in black robes with the scales of justice on their sides, the ones sitting behind their desk in a Senate, congressional, governors, assemblymen's, and state senators and local elected officials' office. They're the criminals because they are allowing this crime surge to continue because they're cowards. They don't have the guts to stand up and do and say what is right on behalf of the American people. So I dare to say that even some of them who are elected to office, who are friends of mine, you know who you are. I've shared it with you offline. When are you going to get off your rear end and be a man and a woman and say what needs to be said? Do what needs to be done. And the reason why most of them, not all of them, there are a few that are doing it the right way. But the reason is, folks, and I said this all along, and again, I share this with the Canadian people because you're going to go through a storm if your legislature or if your parliament don't get this right. The reason is, what's more important to them than your life or my life? Than your safety or my safety? Than the future of your children? You know what's more important to them? Their safety, their life, their future. They're more concerned about their political future than the public safety of you and me. Tell me that you can't prove that, because I can, and I will. So the fact of the matter is that right now you have a situation developing in the United States of America where the crime rate continues to soar, and the Democrats continue to say, well, we are safer than we were many years ago. Why? Because of crime reform. Well, we're going to talk about that. Let's get to New York City. Major crime has increased by 22% in New York City. Why? The police will tell you why. The victims will tell you why. The little guy in the street who has his head bashed in and is worried about standing near a subway because they get tossed in front of a train, they'll tell you why. They'll tell you why, because of bail reforms. How about this? New York City councilmen and women, I got a challenge for you. How about senators, congressmen, anybody? I'd like you to put a pair of clothes on without a tie and suit on, like I'm dressed tonight. I want you to put a pair of jeans on, maybe how about a shirt with a little oil on it, right? In other words, I want you to look like somebody who's been out in the streets working hard. And I want you to take a subway across Manhattan. I want you to take a subway across Manhattan. I want you to go to Philadelphia, where the streets are littered with urine and human waste. Just walk down the street. I want you to go down any street in Chicago where you hear some bang, 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 not fireworks, but where you're going to hear gunfire and you're going to hear screams. And then you're going to turn a corner and you're going to see red, and it ain't going to be red paint. It's going to be red blood. Or how about this? Instead of walking anywhere, because you probably don't have the guts to do that. I've done it. I've done it as a police officer. I've done it as a civilian. How about this? How about spending 30 days in a neighborhood where the crime rate is up 22%? How about spending 30 days in an apartment where the crime rate is up 15%? How about 7%? How about 5%? You're not going to do that, are you? And the reason why you're not going to do it is you're scared. And that's okay. It's okay to be scared when you know that bang, bang, bang is not fireworks, but when you know that it's gunfire. So if you're scared, how do you think the people that live there day and night feel? Scared to death. Last week, a 7-year-old kid gets gunned down in one of these cities here in America, sleeping, I think it was Chicago, sleeping in his car, got shot to death. Baby, 7, 8, 9 months old, being killed by stray bullets in their homes. So who do we blame? Do you blame the gun? I blame the criminal, yes, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But I blame you, the politician. You, the great person that is now campaigning all over America. Man, I've never gotten more mail, more emails than people running for office in my entire life than I have now. I don't even know who half these people are. They're running for office. In fact, the ones that are in office, obviously I know who they are. But up until about 2 weeks ago, I never got a letter from them, never got a call. In fact, you call their office and you don't get a call back. You send a letter, you don't get a letter back. But do this. Do what a friend of mine did. Send a letter and tell them you got about $100,000 ready to go into their campaign account, and there will be people knocking at your door, ringing your phone, sending you emails, begging to make an appointment to see you. What a bunch of phonies. What a bunch of phonies. And those are the people we need to get out of office. They want to know why the Canadian people are angry. You want to know why the American people are angry. They love their country. And they are fed up with you tearing it apart. They're fed up with you here in the United States of America, who have promised people so much of at least a freedom and liberty, at least a decent quality of life. And you're drilling them right into the ground. That's what you are doing. But no, things are fine, says Joe Biden. Oh, things are fine, says Justin Trudeau. Things are fine, says who? The Democrats here in the United States of America, the supporters of the Trudeau group up there in Canada and elsewhere. Things are just fine according to them. Of course it's fine according to them. They're not being affected. They're making laws that are putting us in cages. Well, guess what, guys? You're getting an eviction notice. At least here in November, many of you in Congress, you're going to be getting an eviction notice. You're going to be going into the neighborhoods because you're not going to be able to afford where you live now. That's right. You're going to be going into some of those neighborhoods. So anyway, listen to this, folks. 16,343 major crimes reported in the first 2 months of 2020 now in the city of New York. And I understand that now it's 2022. They're still gathering the criminal data, and it's increased dramatically. So now, why? Why is this happening? As I said, yes, the criminals, indeed. The criminals, absolutely. They're the ones that pick up the guns and beat people and toss them over subway platforms. But who allows them? Who gives them the gun? Who gives them the opportunity to commit the crime? The people who are asking you and I to vote for them. Yeah, the ones that want our support are asking us to support their policies that are killing our kids, that are killing our future, that are stealing our money. They are the ones. And they're the ones we need to remove from office. And we've got the mechanism, folks, within the framework of the law. Get yourself to the polls and throw them the heck out of office. Now let's talk about, I'm going to name some names, folks. This is not going to be too popular, this segment, but let's name some names, okay? Now, so the crime rate's going up. The new criminal justice reforms introduced in the city of New York have resulted in several cases where suspects who are usually locked up, they're usually spending a lot of time in jail, obviously before the Democrats took control, while being suspected of a crime. But instead of now, under the new bail reform, instead of keeping these people in jail, well, under new crime reform bills, new crime reform laws, they actually get out of jail before they ever get into jail. And there's no bail because as soon as they get to the police station, before the cop opens the door to put them in headquarters, there's somebody waiting there saying they could go. So let's name some names. So they include Charles Barry, 56, a serial thief who has been arrested. Hey, this is incredible. He was arrested 139 times by New York police. He has served 6 stints in state prison for nonviolent crimes like selling drugs and larceny. He has been arrested 6 times so far in 2020, and each time he has been freed without paying bail thanks to a new law. Now, do you think this guy today in 2022, I don't know what's happened to him, but you think he stopped committing crimes? I don't think so. But he was released. 139 times arrested. Jordan Randolph, 40, was released on bail the day after he was charged with a felony DWI, that's driving while intoxicated, over a January 12th crash on Long Island that killed a 27-year-old man. He killed someone. According to these media reports, he killed someone. Prosecutors say that as Randolph was being handcuffed moments after the crash, he bragged to police that he wouldn't be in prison long because of new charges or because of new changes to the bail laws. I've heard that time and time again from cops, where the bad guys are telling them, look, you can handcuff me, I'll go peacefully, I'll be out in 5 minutes. And they're right. Maybe not 5 minutes, maybe 6 minutes. Randolph. At the time of the crash, Randolph had 12 previous criminal convictions, including 3 driving while intoxicated since 2011. So here you have a repeat offender, led up to the death of an individual, and who knows, he's probably a limousine driver somewhere now. Until, of course, God forbid, he ends up in trouble again. Jared Woodbury, 42, a suspected serial bank robber who was released under the new bail reforms, went on to carry out 2 more alleged bank robberies. This is unbelievable. I'm reading this stuff for the second time, not the first time. I scanned it, but when you read it again, you say, so here's a guy arrested for bank robbery, and under the new bail reform law, they let him out, and because they let him out, he went out and robbed a few more banks. He is alleged to have carried out 4 robberies across New York before being arrested and brought before a judge on January 9th, who then had no choice but to do what? To do what? The judge says he had no choice but to let him go again. This is fact, folks. This is fact. Now, a few months ago, members of the Partnership for New York City, now these are a group of business executives, from what I understand, 100 members of the city's largest business group, representing CEOs of finance, retail, real estate, and on, they actually had a meeting with one of the DAs in New York and one of the individuals in the mayor's administration, and they told them, look, we've got to put a handle on this crime thing here. Nobody's coming to our stores, and it's hard for our people to come to work. They're scared to death. And the answer, from what I understand from the prosecutors and the district attorneys and the politicians, is, well, we got to be kind of balanced here. We got to be kind of nice to these poor people that are committing these crimes. That's the answer. That's the answer. The answer is that they're not watching, they're not listening, because they don't care. Because crime has not creeped into their neighborhoods. Well, now the CEOs and some of the people running the show with regard to the economy, now they're being affected. Now they're being affected. And now they're beginning to put a little pressure, the green pressure on these politicians. But hey, guys, the train left the station. Forget the green pressure. We're going to have the political pressure brought down on the heads of these people. And they're going to be gone. Whoosh, gone. Because they can't fool us anymore. So here's what I've come to, folks. Look I'm not running for office. Maybe one day I will, but I don't like it when somebody says, well, if I was running for office, or if I was in office, this is what I would do. I don't like to do that, but I'm going to make an exception tonight, because going through my mind is, what would you do? And I say that to you because people have asked me, really, what would you do? So here's some of the things I would do. And I'm going to just do a little summary of it. And hopefully some politicians listening, and if what I'm going to do hurts somebody's feelings, well, too bad. Don't vote for me if I ever decide to run. So first of all, let's call this the Rogers Crime Reform Act. How's that sound? The Rogers Crime Reform Act. Okay, so here's my Reform Act. Number 1, absolutely no bail for violent crimes until the suspect comes before a judge for a bail hearing. So in other words, right now, The police drive a suspect to the police desk. The police desk tells the officer who arrested the suspect, you got to let him go. No bail. Well, but there was no hearing. There was no judge. Nobody said, heard what went on here and how he beat the little old 90-year-old lady in the head with a brick. Well, under the new laws, we can't do that. So we're going to put an end to that. I would put an end to that. Now, of course, the complaint of the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union, and others, they're probably going to be, you can't get to a judge until 6 months to a year. Well, you know what, folks? If it takes a year to see a judge, too bad. You commit the crime, you serve the time. I have no sympathy for criminals that commit violent crimes. Now, one of the most controversial issues that have been discussed in the past, but you know what? Mandatory sentencing. I want to take the sentencing procedures out of the hands of judges in many, many cases. Mandatory sentencing for those who are convicted of committing any violent crime against any person or any animal. Any person or any animal. Now, one might say, why any animal? For a few reasons. I love animals. I love pets. I love dogs. I love cats, birds, you name it. I love them. And those who abuse innocent, harmless, defenseless animals deserve to go to jail for a long time. Because, folks, I believe it is a proven fact that when you abuse an animal, you will eventually abuse a human being. When you kill an animal, you may eventually kill a human being. These people deserve prison for a long time. Mandatory sentencing. So in other words, under my law, under my act, under my recommendation for legislation, you hurt another person or abuse an animal in any way, you're going to go to prison. Minimum 5 years with absolutely no chance of parole. And maximum, the sky's the limit. Yeah, the sky's the limit. Wing, you're going to prison for a long time. You lay your hands on somebody, well, you're going to go to prison. You hurt an animal, you're going to go to prison. You have no right touching anybody else. You have no right abusing anybody, period. That right will be taken away from you. Under my law, which probably will never exist, but maybe it will one day. And now how about drugs? Oh boy, I'll tell you. The war on drugs, I worked narcotics units many, many times over my career. And I remember speaking with a lot of people, a lot of police officers who were involved in it. And we all felt, it's a waste of time. It's a waste of time. Hey, you arrested drug dealers and they're out back, running around the country. It was a waste of time. Now, look, I admire, as you know, Ronald Reagan and his wife, Nancy. I admired them, but to say no to drugs just didn't work. It didn't work. What we have to do is say no, not say no to drugs, say no to guns, say no to this, say no to that. We got to say no to politicians. No, you're not getting my vote. No, you're not getting my support. Get out of here. I don't even want to talk. Why is it that politicians suddenly want to talk to all of us? Right, folks? Why is it that we're getting love letters from politicians? Come to my event. And then you look at the thing, right? Come to my event. We're having a beefsteak or we're having a beer party, cigar party, whatever party we're having. And then you go down the list. Oh, by the way, although you're invited, a platinum offer, $5,000 donation, gold offer, $2,000. Who could afford $2,000? Who could afford $200? Who could afford $2 at times? And I'm not joking. But this is what they want. Green folks. So this is what they come after during election day. So anyway, and I've always said this with the drug war. One, if a young person or even an older person is addicted to drugs, I've said this my whole career. I believe drug addiction is a mental health problem, a physical health problem. We get those people right to the clinics, right to the place they need to rehab, right to the place they need help from. I have friends, I have had relatives, I've seen young people die as a result of overdose of drugs. I've seen parents nearly commit suicide as a result of the death of a young person who has had a drug problem. And so in the case of those who are addicted, you know what, folks? Grace and mercy, but not the same for the dealer, not the same for the pusher. Those who deal, sell, and distribute any drug illegally, mandatory without parole, 25 years in prison. And if the police can establish that the drug sold by a specific dealer resulted in the death of someone, life in prison without parole. You will never, ever see daylight again. You want to end the war on drugs? You put an end to the life of those who distribute, who sell, and who deal with drugs on the streets of this country. And I'm not saying literally end their life or physically end their life. I'm saying you end it by putting them behind bars for the rest of their life. And indeed, if there's a death penalty anywhere left in America, sentence them to death. Sentence them to the same sentence that they gave to a young person that died as a result of their drugs. Sentence them. Life without parole. Now, what I'd like to add to that also is this: to authorize police nationwide to stop and frisk anyone they deem as a possible threat to public safety. Oh my goodness, Lieutenant Rogers crossed the line. He crossed the line. Now, without warrants, without any suspicion, he wants police to go back to the way they did it before. The way they did it before, right? The way New York City did it before when Rudy Giuliani was mayor, when we had Republican mayors, when we had low crime rates in every city where Republican was mayor. What did we do? We allowed the police to say, hey, what are you doing here? Give a good account of yourself. We have reason to believe you're carrying a weapon or you're carrying something that's going to harm someone else. Oh, my goodness, you can't do that, Lieutenant. Well, we did, and it worked. It worked. More guns and weapons and drugs were taken off the streets by police being able to do that. Now, let me just get one thing straight with you liberals out there. In the 38 years I've been on a police department or been in law enforcement and traveled all over this country, you're going to be hard-pressed to find cops that abuse their power. There are those who do, just like judges and politicians and every other profession, and they should be dealt with. I've always said that. But as a law enforcement officer, and only law enforcement officers are going to understand what I'm about to say. And I hope many of you try to get the point. I should say they're going to feel what I'm about to say. You gain what we call the sixth sense. Inadmissible in a court of law, but it is a very effective sense. You get to understand through your sensory gifts that God's given you. Well, you know, that guy's walking down the street. We've been investigating a string of robberies, and there's a description on the guy, and I don't know, there's just something about that guy. And what we ought to do is check him out. Let's just ask him, do you know anything about this crime? And when you ask the question, the body language, the shifting, the quick blinking, the staring up, you know you got something. Now, what was the probable cause according to law? No, couldn't do it, illegal. Can't do it. Can't do that. The guy could have a gun on him, a knife on him, a bomb on him. You can't do it. Why? Well, because you feel that there's something going on here. Now, that doesn't mean that I want cops to stop everybody just because they want to stop everybody. They don't do that. Some of them do, and they should be dealt with. But there are guidelines. There's a framework that we had years ago, and it worked well. So I want to see stop and frisk come back. What's wrong with that? Hey, if a cop ever asked me to empty my pockets, sure, I got nothing to hide. They're doing their job. In fact, I'm glad they're doing that. I am absolutely glad, because if they're asking me to empty my pockets, they're asking that guy across the street who possibly has a gun on him or a knife or drugs that he may sell to my kids, grandchildren, or whatever. Let the police do their job. That's what I'm saying. Now, authorize the police to enforce quality of life crimes, such as what is now allowed in some cities. No joke, folks. No joke. In fact, I'm going to try to get the list of cities where this is allowed. All right. I think it's one or two. I shouldn't say a list, one or two cities. Well, we should enforce quality of life crimes such as urinating and defecating in the streets, vandalism, and shoplifting. Yeah, there's a city in this country I read a couple of weeks ago. We're going to get more facts that told the police anybody urinates or defecates in the street, no more bringing them in, leave them alone. Well, who's going to clean it up? Who's going to wash the street down? I think the politicians and the judges who allow these criminals out on the streets, they should be washing the streets down and cleaning it up. No more arrests for shoplifting. That ain't happening anymore. I shared with you several weeks ago, my wife and I go to a huge department store, internationally known. I don't want to name it, but it's internationally known. We know some supervisors in that store. And we're looking around. I said, geez, this looks terrible. What happened here? Clothes all over the place, shoes on the floor, the racks strewn about. The glass on where the jewelry is smudged up and it looks like somebody vomited on one. What the heck happened here? And they told me we can't enforce things anymore. People come in and they leave, but they don't leave empty-handed. Well, if a person leaves and that little buzzer goes off, don't the security people come? Oh no! In fact, there is no buzzer. They stole the buzzer. No kidding, folks. They broke the buzzer. So losses per month, from what I was told in one of these stores, is $20,000 a month. $20,000 a month in losses of people stealing. People have told me who own supermarkets, who work in supermarkets, where no more paper bags. Get a load of that, folks. No more paper bags. So now you go to the store, you got to make sure you bring your bags. I can't begin to tell you how many times my wife and I are in the store and one of us has to run back out to the car because we forgot the bags. So we go and we get the bags, okay? And I'm looking around, I'm saying, well, wait a minute. How is that person behind me with the shopping cart now going out the door? How's that happen? But it happens. Thousands of dollars in lost merchandise. Nobody's around to stop it. And now, as you've seen it, I don't know if in other countries in Canada, you've seen some of the newsreels here where 6 or 7, 8 flash mobs come, they smash windows in the stores and they start beating the living daylights out of some of the clerks and they start cleaning the shelves off. We had one incident in New York, I believe it was, where, they got into a situation where they ran into a tough store owner and the store owner had a gun and killed, or at least shot, I believe he shot someone and maybe killed someone. But you know what the DA did? The DA charged the store owner, either with manslaughter or murder, I forget it was. There was such an uproar, finally, that DA had to back off. But this is why, folks, this is why I go to another one of my crime reform acts is to do what, folks? Is to ensure that we, the people of the United States, are given the absolute backing of the government with regard to the Second Amendment. I would make sure, I would bring legislation in that would make sure that every law-abiding American citizen will make sure that they are protected with their right to bear arms. Again, with guidelines, within the framework of the laws. We don't want bad people, criminals, homicidal maniacs with guns. But in the cities where people are allowed to carry, are allowed to exercise their Second Amendment rights, the crime rate's low. It isn't the Wild West like the Dems would lead us to believe. And then finally, folks, under the Rogers Crime Reform Act, here it is, folks. Here's where I lose some friends. My thought was always this with regard to court reform. Civilian review boards. You ever hear that? I know in America, these large cities where the Democrats are in control, we got to have civilian review boards. We've got to be able to review the actions of police officers. Every action. We got to review their actions. Why? Well, we don't know if they're really doing their job the way they should. So they have some politician appoint these civilians. Well, are they qualified in the law? No. Well, were they ever police officers? No. Well, what's their qualifications to be a civilian, a member of the Civilian Review Board? Well, they probably had to kiss the rear end of a politician, to be frank with you. So now the politician puts these people on the Civilian Review Board, and now they're second guessing the actions of every cop. How about this one? Under the new act that I would like to, if I ever have the opportunity to at least introduce. How about civilian review boards for judges? What do you think of that? You know, they love to set up all these boards for cops, so why not judges? Why can't we have civilians from all walks of life who are affected by the decisions of these judges review the actions of these judges? Now, of course, lawyers and politicians say, oh, that's out of line. We have judicial review boards. We have law review boards. We've already got review boards. Of course, the people reviewing the judges are the people who appoint those on the review board. It's incredible, isn't it, folks? So how about just have a few other people outside the court system review these judges, right? In some states of the United States, by the way, judges are elected. A lot of them are getting tossed out west. But anyway, the reason why I say that is that the judiciary in America, people have lost confidence in it. We got a lot of good judges. Many of them are my friends. God bless them. But those who are liberals, who are politicians, they don't belong behind a bench in a courtroom. They belong behind bars in a prison. So anyway, folks, those are just a few things that pass my mind. And maybe I'll write up what we call a white paper or a summary of the changes that I'd like to see made. But I think, folks, that's what we should be able to do. And one more thing, and I just read something down here. Why not give all these politicians and judges and all these people making decisions for us, why not have mandatory drug testing, mandatory mental health examinations? What do you think of that? My goodness, there'd be nobody left. There'd be nobody left for the courts. There'd be nobody left for the passing and review of legislation. What do you think of that, folks? What do you think of that? Do you think it's impossible? I don't. I don't think it's impossible. I think it's plausible. I think in this day and age where people have had enough, well, they want us to work, and they should want us to work within the framework of the law. Well, let's use the very laws that they created to get rid of them. What do you think of that, folks? So anyway, that's a road I would go down, a very conservative road, very strict, tough road. And there's more. Maybe next Monday night I'll talk about how I want to reform the military. So those are the things that I would propose if I was ever to run for office. And who knows what the Lord has in store for me moving forward. Now I'm going to wrap things up. Boy, I tell you, how time flies. And it's been, I actually planned to be on 30 minutes. It's now 51 minutes. But it's fun. Sometimes we can have some fun. In the toughest and darkest times, we can have some fun. But the part of the fun is what we're talking about is serious, and what we can do is real. Impossibilities are not in my book. Everything is possible. What's the Bible say? All things are possible. And that's why I say to you, on this Labor Day, you've labored so hard for your country. You've labored so hard for your family. You've labored so hard for your friends and for yourself. Don't give up. Don't quit. Never, never give up. Never quit. Just get yourself out of that depressive state. And I know how it is. Believe me, I know. You ever wake up in the morning and say, I just don't want to get up. I just don't want to get up. Why? I don't know. I just don't want to get up. Well, folks, when you get to that point, all right, there's a God who loves you. There are people who depend on you. And there's a country that depends on you. There are people not even yet born in your country who depend on you. Don't give up. All right, that's it, folks. I want to thank you all for joining me tonight. Thursday night, tonight in Canada, we got a special guest coming on, if all goes well, and I'd encourage you to tune in. So thank you for joining me this evening. We're going to be hitting the road again. We got a lot of work to do. The whole world's watching America right now with regard to our elections, and I'm very optimistic that there's going to be a domino effect. It's going to start. Perhaps Florida, Texas, a southern border, and it's going to bing, 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 bing. But it's not going to stop at the American-Canadian border. It's going to roll right into Canada. Bing, 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 bing. How's that sound? All right, folks. God bless you all. God bless America. God bless Canada and all of you in the free world. I hope and pray that you have a wonderful, wonderful week ahead of you, and we'll see you Thursday night. And I'm going to sign off, but I'm going to ask you once again. I really mean this. Look at that book. Just pray about it. I never expected it would have the impact it has had on the people who have written us. And maybe you would detour to tonight's broadcast to even pick that up. And by the way, I want you to know, and thank you all for your contributions and your prayers and your gifts. I've got so many wonderful, beautiful gifts from people in Canada. I just thank you so much. And even my fellow countrymen sending me all sorts of state flags. And I mean, it's just so touching, so touching. You don't know how I wish I could do more, believe me. But that's it, folks. Thank you so much. God bless you. And you know what? Keep the faith. And remember, just remember, you're not alone. And always in your heart, in your soul, and in your spirit, let freedom ring.